Hello, guys. Welcome back for another episode of Against the Currents. I'm here with
Ashanti Jamosa,
Valerie Diaz,
and Daniel Suarez.
And my name is Mia Vasquez, and today we're going to be talking about abortion and birth control, more specifically. So, on July 23rd of this year, the FDA approved the first ever non-prescription over-the-counter birth control. It's called Opill. It's manufactured by this company called Perrigo. And there have been a lot of controversial opinions about it, more specifically because it doesn't require a prescription and it's so easily accessible. At least in my humble opinion, I've heard the pros and the cons, and I think the pros are convenience. But I don't think that outweighs the fact that that's going to make, human trafficking a lot easier. That's going to give access to medications to, little girls who don't really know what they're doing or don't really have the knowledge to consent to actually having so many hormones injected into their body. This is a progestin-only hormone pill. If you don't know what progestin is, it's the main ingredient in most hormonal birth controls. So, I don't know. What do you guys think of this?
Personally, me as a man, I don't really think I have a word to say in something that is about you, like girls in general. But everything in life, I think is you just do what you want to do. I'm not bothering you, but it's up to you if you take it, if you don't take it.
The difference between this and a normal pill is that you don't have to go to the doctor. So usually you would have to go to your gynecologist, and the gynecologist would check you out and give you a prescription for this. Okay. This means that anyone could walk into their local CVS and just be like, hey, have some birth control. Doesn't matter if you're 10 years old. Doesn't matter if you're 15 years old. Think about it like if this was your daughter. Yeah. Would you want your daughter to have access to birth control at 12 years old?
No.
Exactly. So, that statement you made, oh, I'm a man, so I don't really have a word, kind of agree, but kind of don't agree. Because one day you're going to have kids. Yeah. And this is going to affect your wife's quality of life. I don't know. What do you think, Valerie?
I think it's scary because it has a lot of consequences. Like when you take the pill, I'm actually on the pill and I feel different when I'm not. So imagine just any kind of little girl, teenager, going through this at that age. I don't think it's the best option right now.
I wonder what this means politically. And so I'm wondering if there will be a political push against it.
Honestly, I hope so. Because all the arguments for this that I'm hearing is, oh, well, there's not enough access to birth control. And I honestly don't think that's true. I mean, I think if you go to your gynecologist and you have insurance, which the majority of people in this country do, there's no way they're not gonna give you birth control.
I go to my gyno and I have insurance and I don't pay for my pills. It's literally free.
What I'm concerned about is now some 40-year-old pimp can walk into a CVS and literally just buy birth control and pimp out little girls. And that takes away, now I know that she's not going to get pregnant.
I think that's also where I'm at. I agree with what Daniel said. I'm the type of person, I don't really care what you do. Your business is your business. But I also agree with the point you made that imagine I have a daughter or a little cousin or something to just walk in and they just buy something they don't know or they're given something they don't know. It's just that could hurt them. So there's two sides to it, honestly.
It's you don't let 18 to 21 8-year-olds to drink, but you let the people get birth control. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
And it's like that in a lot of stuff, a lot of topics.
Because, one of the interviews that I saw, I believe is on CNN, Kelly Blanchard, which is the president of Reproductive Health Organization, she was stressing. She was this means birth control access for all ages. I'm like, girl, why does there have to be birth control access for all ages? Well, I don't know. I feel like there's this weird push to normalize kids having sex. Why?
Yeah.
Why? There's supposed to be certain, I don't want to say taboos, maybe fears in having sex. Maybe I shouldn't have sex at 15 because I might get pregnant. That's
maybe
good.
Maybe not that, but not push him or push her to do it. But I have heard maybe some schools give condoms that's pushing the kid to do it.
Okay,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I'm saying that, like, so you have this general basis understanding of sexual education, right? Based off of if your parents signed a waiver for you to take the class in school, right? And you're, metaphorically speaking, we'll say like 12, right? A lot of younger girls get their period at that age, which allows them the ability to get pregnant. Not necessarily saying that they're having sex. I don't know how likely it is that a minor, right, or somebody who's like under the age of consent, so we'll say like under 16, somebody who's in middle school, pre-high school. I feel like people start having sex more like in high school. So yeah, so what is the like likelihood that somebody of that age is gonna go by themselves and request birth control without a demand? But you guys are saying that just the accessibility, it having the option is pushing for sex?
Yeah. Well, because kids, I remember we were kids not too long ago. I remember what it was like to be a young girl. And I remember the pressure, especially in the current kind of society that we live in, is very sexualized, to start having sex very young. And I remember asking my mom, I want to get on birth control. Mom, to not so much for me, but because I felt like I needed to do certain things for the men that I was around. I started getting on birth control when I was 16, 17 years old. Me, personally, if I knew that there was a way to get birth control without needing my mom's permission, I would have totally gone and done that. So from that perspective, I can, kids are going to do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Either way. Like, and if you make it easier for them, that's just going to worsen it. Like,
But exactly. So if kids are going to have sex either way, isn't it better to prevent the actuality of having a child?
But
there's so many other ways to do it.
like,
They can still go to the doctor.
yeah, go to the doctor to
Or at
Ask
To be
for it.
prescribed, to get it prescribed.
Or at
Okay.
least have a age.
But let's talk about the shame associated with sex, right? You can't tell your mom, I started having sex at 14, and so I want to go to the doctor to get on birth control. What the hell? Like, at least culturally, from what I've known, what my friends have experienced, nobody I know personally has such an open relationship with their parents where they can just be like, hey, I'm thinking about having sex, or I started having sex, so let's go to the doctor and get checked out.
So the question I have for you, Ashanti, then is, so would you rather, so say you have a daughter, would you rather her go to CVS by herself, go get birth control, or would you rather her come to you and say, I want to have sex, and I'd rather go to the doctor?
Yeah,
I
because who knows
don't-
who she's having sex with? She could be
Yeah.
having sex with some 30-year-old guy.
Right, but I think that question inherently has a bias because I don't want to raise my kids in a place where they don't feel comfortable. And I think that the narratives are different, and I think that the way we as one of the younger generations talk about sex is different. So I feel like we have a more knowledgeable sense about sex, and I'm sure our parents feel the same way.
Yeah.
But in reality, what ended up happening from what I was observing in my friends and my family and my immediate society was that there was a lot of shame associated with sex. And so because there's shame, people didn't feel like they could talk about it, which is why they do stuff sneakily. You ever heard, like, strict parents breed sneaky children?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's
so
true,
it
yeah.
would be more like that. So if I had kids, I would hope that they didn't feel the need to be sneaky because I've decided to elicit this environment where they can come to me and talk to me.
I don't know how open can you be exactly, but like I think like even though you're open, they're still gonna do stuff behind like.
True.
behind
Yeah.
Yeah, kids are kids, yeah.
But having this creates a legal avenue for them to go behind your back.
Yeah.
In my opinion, honestly, I think there should be a certain amount of, like, not shame, but I think that a 14-year-old girl has no business having sex. I think that kids really have no business having sex. You're not understanding, like, what truly you are doing to yourself and your body. We're growing up in a society where you can't turn a corner without seeing a girl in a bikini. You can't go on Instagram for 3 seconds without seeing, like, some borderline soft porn. So the expectation is already there. So yeah, I think that they're like, parents should be telling their kids, hey, you probably should not be having sex before you're at least, like, mature enough to fully consent to what you're doing.
And let's not talk only about like the parents. Like it is medicine that you are taking.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
doing something on your
Yeah.
body that a doctor needs to check if you're good.
Yeah.
or not.
That's
Exactly.
true.
Oh no, 100%. Anything hormonal for sure has very big impacts.
Yeah.
And so I have never been on birth control, but the reason why I never been on birth control because I wanted to get on it when I was younger. Actually, I didn't want to get on it, but it was pushed onto me that I should get on it when I was younger. The reason why I didn't want to do it was because I was still developing. I wasn't 18 yet. My body didn't finish growing, and I didn't want to put any of my hormones in jeopardy, right?
Yeah.
Especially how common PCOS is and things like that. So I didn't want to alter. If it's not broke, don't fix it.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I didn't want
would
to.
agree.
But I was having sex at the time, right? So one could argue that being on birth control is the preventative way from having kids and whatever, and that's the responsible route. But I was leaning so much towards that perspective of like it's a hormonal thing. You don't want to mess up your hormones. So I think it's
And
given
hormones are like
everything. They regulate your body.
So I'm interested, Valerie, because you mentioned that you are on birth control right now. If you don't mind sharing, what do you think are the differences that you see within yourself before and after?
I see a lot of difference, and I feel more emotional. So like anything can make me cry.
Well, what kind of birth control are you on, if you don't mind?
The pills.
The pill.
Yeah.
And that's a progestin based hormone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I started it actually because I have acne, so that's like other way to treat acne. If I haven't like suffered from acne, I'm not taking it.
But you
Because
see how there's so many other things that you could do for your acne, like besides like taking
but
progestin.
it's more invasive.
Yeah.
But you see how like just like in putting stuff into your body that really has like there's no need for it to be there. Like progestin specifically, which is like the only ingredient in hormonal birth control, it causes breast cancer, it can cause infertility. There are girls that I know that use the pill, I'm not sure if you do this, to skip their period. And to me that's like that's weird because I feel like if your body's getting rid of it, that means that it needs to go out. Like so keeping all of that inside of you, I don't know. I can't see how that doesn't have consequences, you know?
I have a question for you, Valerie, now though. Since you are on birth control, so now how we were saying, like, if we had, like, a little daughter or something like that, or we had, like, a little cousin that's a girl, like, you wouldn't want to, stuff like that. So since you're on birth control, if you had a daughter or, you know, like, a little cousin or something that's, like, a girl, what decision would you give to her if she was thinking about, you know, starting to have sex and stuff?
It depends, because if you go to the doctor, it, like, you need this pill because of this and this and this. If a doctor told me that, I'm going to believe the doctor. Like, it's a fact that you need it. Yeah. But if you don't need it, like, why to fix what it's not broken? Like,
True.
Personally, like, I don't know anything exactly about it, but I want to, like, in general, like, pills and stuff, and mostly, like, hormonal stuff. I want to, like, learn about, like, more natural ways to, like illness and stuff. I don't know anything yet, but that's one of the things that I have in mind, like in my future.
Medicines.
Oh yeah, no.
Natural medicines.
I like
which
holistic.
is good, you know.
Yeah.
It's not that I'm not gonna stop like taking the regular, you know, Tylenol sometimes, you know, but like maybe get that knowledge, you know, which is good.
No, holistic medicine is really interesting. It's really fun to get into, actually. I pick up on it occasionally.
Are there any holistic, like, substitutions for birth control?
For birth control, they say papaya seeds
and vitamin C, I've heard. Like, if you miss your period, just drink a lot of vitamin C. Yeah.
But I don't know if I don't know exactly how papaya seeds work. I think they may cause a miscarriage. Don't quote me on that. Papaya seeds, if you
you can cause a miscarriage.
I don't know if y'all ever had papaya seeds. They suck. They taste so bad. and don't make no assumptions.
That's because I'm eating the papaya.
I like my fruits. Thank you.
Oh, I mean, tying into our we were also going to talk about abortion. So, Roe v. Wade and birth control kind of all came about in about the 1970s. I believe that birth control was first made publicly available in 1973. My personal opinion, right? There are certain secondhand repercussions to taking the consequences away from sex. So when it comes to birth control, right? As a man, right? Before, let's say birth control didn't exist, you were going to be a lot more careful with who you had sex with, because you knew that there was a high probability that if you had sex with someone, you were going to get pregnant, you were going to have to raise a kid with that person. So what birth control and abortion did, in my opinion, is caused a lot of economic disparity, because it takes away the responsibility from the man and it gives the responsibility to the woman. So this paper by this guy named George Akerlof in the 1990s, who won a Nobel Prize for economy. His wife is actually the Secretary of Treasury for the current Biden administration. And his theory is that because abortion and birth control take away the responsibility from men and push it more towards the women, because now it's like, okay, you're pregnant, you as the woman have the final choice, right? You can get an abortion or you can keep it. That has nothing to do with me. So what happens is that the people that advocate for this are more like middle class, college educated, white liberals who don't really have to suffer the consequences of this, because there are certain social taboos that actually protect people on the lower end of the economic spectrum. So the people that advocate for this very much have children inside of marriage, very much get married and have very successful careers, and the people that are suffering the consequences of this are people that don't have those opportunities.
And you're saying people who advocate for abortion?
No, I'm saying people who have more like the mindset, like the very like pro-choice, like kind of liberal mindset, liberal in the literal sense of like, I'm sure you study political science. I'm sure you know, like more like you do whatever you want, and that has nothing to do with me. But I disagree with that, because I think everything in society has to do with each other. So everyone's kind of choices feed into this pool that everyone drinks out of. You get me? When you all live in a collective. So, what do you think, Dylan? Kind of shot at you there.
Yeah, that was.
I felt like I was talking for too long.
That was deep. That was powerful. Personally, on abortion, the birth control, I already said the way I feel about it is the way Daniel feels about it. You do what you please. I really don't care. It doesn't have to do with me. As long as it doesn't affect me, then that's whatever. How I feel about abortion is completely different. I actually do not like abortion at all. That's the taking of a life. And I take that very serious, because I consider that as like murder. Like that's killing a life. That's a life before they even had a chance to become a life like in the real world. So the way I feel about abortion is I wouldn't say I advocate like for everyone, because I'm like neutral for politics, but I would say like I don't like abortion. So if I had to choose a side, I would say abortion is bad. That's how I feel though.
So DeSantis recently passed like a 6-week ban on abortion. So past 6 weeks, you can't really get an abortion in Florida. So what do you think about that? Do you think that is kind of reasonable in the sense that it's not a fully formed fetus yet, or are you more of the opinion that life begins at conception?
No, life begins at conception. Once you have sex, obviously without protection and stuff, birth control, you're having that sex because a life is going to be created. That's what you're having it for. It's just like how they say don't like for like Christians. I think it's like sex before marriage or something like that. Don't have sex before marriage and all that, because if you have sex, obviously you're creating a life. So the way I feel is that's life before conception. So either way, I think it's bad. Either way, that's how I feel though.
I want to make a point in that like a woman who gets her cycle regularly, right, has a week window, the fertility window, the ovulation period, where they can get pregnant, right? Outside of that window, it is highly unlikely. Mm-hmm. And I feel like we're putting more stress on this 1 week, which, I mean, I don't know. I can't speak on everybody's responsibility on tracking their systems. Some women are irregular. Some women have PCOS and a whole bunch of other stuff that would irregulate their menstrual cycles. But I think that the probability based off of a 1 week to 4 week ratio, right, is 1 week out of the whole month. And then preceding that, you have another week where you're on your period. It's less likely to get pregnant. So it's not like, I feel like there's been a lot of fear-mongering in terms of like pregnancy and its taboos. Because like, bam, you have sex and you're going to get pregnant. And it's like, that's not like, that's a fear tactic to scare people out of having sex when people are going to have sex regardless. And I think that that's part of where the shame that I'm talking about comes from. It comes out of fear instead of out of an educational point.
Well, yeah, but like I totally agree. There's definitely an ovulation period where you're more likely to get pregnant than others, but you can totally get pregnant at any time. Like if you are having unprotected sex, like unprotected sex, you could get pregnant even on your period, even if it's a lower chance. If you're like right now, we're in peak fertility. We're like in our early 20s. There's a high chance of getting pregnant at any moment.
I'm just saying the narrative of you have sex, you're gonna get pregnant. Like it's very aggressive. I don't think that it's the right approach when it comes to sexual education.
But I don't think that there is that.
It makes people like, let's say, scared, like kids, so they be more careful on what they do.
Honestly, does it really make them scared?
I mean,
no.
Nowadays people are having sex like rapidly.
Like rabbits, yeah.
Like it's regular.
Because the society
Because
is
it's
like
normalized.
really
Yeah, unlike
normalized.
back then in society, like it wasn't the same way. But now it's just like sex is just like a regular thing.
Well, not gonna lie, I think that we're also saying that right now we have more sex than, like, let's say our parents or our
No, that's
grandma.
that's not true.
And that's not true at
Like,
all.
That's
Yeah.
not true.
Like
We're
my
actually
family-
having less sex. This generation is having
yes,
less sex.
I agree.
or we are taking more seriously like the repercussions, because my great grandmother,
Mhm.
she had like 9 kids. Like that's a lot.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, and
Well, then that was normal to have
Yeah.
lots of babies.
Yeah.
I think that also has to do with like culture and stuff though. Like
Yeah.
because my grandparents are the same way. I don't even have to go that far back.
No,
They're
no.
like one of 9 on each side, right? So I have a whole bunch of aunties. Yeah.
That's very Hispanic though.
That's very Hispanic. That's what I
Yeah.
was gonna say. Well, I mean, I can only say it's Hispanic because that's what I know. I think that's Caribbean too, though. I would argue, because a lot of the Caribbean people I know are the same thing. They're like 1 of 10, and they have like aunts and uncles they don't even know about.
I think people are having less sex in general because people don't have like normal monogamous relationships where you have like normal sex. Now it's like you're just sleeping with randos once a month. Like just it's like I feel like meaningless sex is way more common.
I think
among the
right
youth.
now people are more scared of commitment than
Yes.
having
Yeah,
sex.
that's true.
Yeah, and that's kind of terrible.
Yeah, I think that has to do with like societal expectations.
Daniel, I haven't heard. So, what do you think about abortion in general? Dylan shared his thoughts. You as a man, your perspective must be
I
interesting.
think it's I don't have the same opinion as Dylan, even though it does hurt, like the thing, if you think that it's a life. But I also believe that as a woman, you have your opinion and maybe your reasons to do it or not do it. But it's a really deep topic to like get into.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I have like, if you want to do it, I'm not gonna judge you. Like it's your like, and I agree. Maybe you have your points, but as well, you need to like whenever you have sex, you need to also have in mind that what are the consequences of doing it without protection. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Or what's gonna happen, or maybe take some time out, some type of, I don't know, something to prevent it, you know.
So, do you think that men should have a say? Like, let's say you were to get a girl pregnant. Do you think you should have an actual say? Like, they should have like your approval, or do you think that's not a man's place?
I don't think an actual say, actually. I think it's more of the woman, because she's the one who's carrying the baby.
Mm-hmm.
But
We'll get your thoughts on
Go
that.
ahead,
Let
Daniel.
Daniel
But
finish.
I
I
mean,
completely
you.
disagree, too.
I think the women, like, I mean, because it's a creation from both of you, so I think the woman should at least like, hey, what you think? What we're gonna do? And if the man says no, maybe she at least take that into consideration, you know.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's
with that,
difficult.
I think like it depends on the situation,
Mm-hmm.
because if like some married couple had sex, had a baby, like she's pregnant, but she want to abort, like, and the parent, like the dad, doesn't want to abort, like you have to take the consideration into that.
Yeah.
Of course.
But if the situation is the girl was
Assaulted.
yeah,
Yeah.
sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
That depends only on the girl.
Okay. Dylan.
So it depends.
I know you wanted
Completely
to say
agree with what
something.
Valerie said. I have nothing else to say. I completely agree with what she said.
Well, I mean, I consider myself to be more on the pro-life spectrum of things. However, if I was a person who was pro-choice, I would say that it's a little bit more nuanced than that, because I think women have more of a responsibility to the baby than men do. In reality, we are giving up our bodies, and we are giving up, like, not giving up because that has a negative connotation to it, but we have the responsibility of caring for this child for the rest of our lives. Whereas the men in reality could just, it's out. I'm out. They could say, oh, I love you today and be out tomorrow. So I think men should have, their opinion should be taken into consideration, but I don't think that it should be like, oh, if the father doesn't agree,
Also,
then you
depend
can't.
on the situation, just like you
Yeah,
But
exactly.
On what you said, I think that more on giving like all the girl, like I completely agree with you,
Mhm.
but I think that in an ideal world, the men parents should educate the boy on take responsibility too, because
Of course.
it's his responsibility
Of course. But not everyone is like that.
too. No.
Not everyone is like that. What about you, Ashanti? What do you think? You've been quiet for a second.
Maybe that's intentional.
No, tell
Go
us. This is a free forum.
No, this is recorded to be on the internet. This is life.
Yeah. I also
Right.
think about that and it's like, oh my god, this is crazy.
We're not saying anything bad.
You gotta go off.
You gotta go off, Shawty.
There are certain things I want to be known for in life. I don't know if my thoughts on abortion is one of them. Not because I think that they're radical, but I am more on the pro-choice side of things.
Tell us why. Move more here. You're like kind of out of the shot.
Just because life has a lot of nuance, right? What did Michael Jackson say? If you can't feed the baby, then don't have the baby. So I think that people think of it as like, oh, well, you decided to have sex, so you created life. But at the same time, like, we are hormonal beings. Everybody knows that. Like, you know, I think it's very unrealistic to tell somebody to abstain from sex forever, or to abstain from sex if they don't want to have a child, because that's just like, we have urges, we have needs, you know, and they're hormonal, and that's 100% normal. There are ways you can have sex and not have a child. You can get on birth control, you can use condoms. If you have a pregnancy and it is by mistake, right, I think it's a calculated choice, right? Because if I have a child, I want to provide the best that I can for my child. So
Agreed.
if I'm in the situation where I don't think I can provide the best for myself, then I'm not going to have a child. So what ends up happening is that child doesn't have a good foundation, and then they just become another cog in the machine because of
It's like a cycle.
Exactly.
I agree.
So I feel like the opportunity to have an abortion, it's like, in a way, people think of it as like a selfish act because you're only thinking about yourself. But if you can't provide what's best for your child, or you can't provide the necessary resources for them to be independent, because think about it, like a lot of us young people now, we can't even move out. We can't buy our own cars. We can't, you know, like, if you're not setting themselves up to the point where they can be independent because you don't have the means to do so, you're not at that educational level, you're not at that career level, whatever the case may be, then I think that an abortion is an alternative to consider, because you don't want to bring your child up to struggle. You don't want to bring your child up without them having the necessary resources to thrive, not just to survive.
But you can also make an adoption.
That's what I was literally about
Yeah.
to say. Just give them up for adoption if you can't
Like,
do it
there
yourself.
are many couples that can't
Yeah.
get pregnant and they want a baby, and you can give it for adoption.
It's
The
interesting.
reality of the situation when it comes to the whole, like, adoption, right, is that it's a game of probability, and what ends up happening is that Black and brown kids are left in the system until they age out. You are more likely to get adopted if you're a white baby. And that's unfortunate, and the reality is that people who have access to things like contraceptives and stuff like that are in a higher tax bracket, and those people are predominantly white, right? So it just kind of feeds into the system. Does that make sense? Like, yes, you can put your child up for adoption, but that alone is a system that is complicated.
Well, it's interesting because I used to think very much like you. I used to have like the very same opinion of, oh, well, it's not the ideal situation, but if I don't have the means to bring a child up in the world, like, I'm not going to subject them to less than ideal situations. But I think what changed my mind personally is, I don't know, diving more into like my spiritual beliefs and my belief system. If you truly believe that, you know, that is a life, then there really is no logical conclusion that you could come to that would allow for you to end that thing's life, if you are under the belief that it is a life, you know. Well, this was a very heavy topic. There was a lot of opinions. A lot of people think differently on all these things, but it's important to talk about them either way, and it's important to, no matter how you feel on the spectrum of things, especially when it comes to this, to feel comfortable in speaking. So yeah, this was our second episode of Against the Current. We'll see you guys next week. Please like, subscribe, give us suggestions as to what you'd like us to discuss, and thank you so much. Have a good day.